Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome into Inside the Panel, this week's news in comics industry. I'm one of the co-hosts, Nate, the Magic Nate. With me, I have Carl. Carl, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm Carl Choi, the publisher of 24/7 Comics. Welcome to anyone who's in the live taping. This is our weekly show talking about the week in news and comics. And one big piece of news, Magic Nate, is look at your hat. Nice hat you got there.
Oh, thanks. This old thing. Yeah, if anybody's watching this and wants to know how they can support our wonderful company, like you can head over to 247comics.com, head to the shop, and get yourself one of these snazzy little hats,
Oh,
nicely
yeah.
embroidered. I like this. Look, it's so
Yeah,
cool.
it actually looks really good on you. It's a beautiful hat. I don't even have one. You actually have the one of one, and then anyone else who wants to get it has to order it on our site. So thanks for showcasing that this morning, Nate. We have a lot of news this morning because actually, first of all, before we move on, guys, if you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe down below. Subscribe, like these videos that we record for you every week, and hopefully we could continue doing more of these news and bring you the hottest and latest and our perspective on them as a publisher in the industry. But Nate, I think this week is very special. I'm looking forward to your feedback and thoughts. But we were able to attend Comics Pro, the yearly retailer conference for publishers, distributors, as well as comic book retailers, which is actually the most kind of important audience of why this conference happens. What was your impression of Comics Pro?
It was insane. So, for those of you watching at home, the team already knows for 24/7 Comics. I'm kind of a comic noob. Just got thrown into the industry. I come from the escape room industry and magic industries. Um, so, attending a conference like this was a little bit different for me. Something to not just be for the public, but this is definitely more business oriented, and it was a different vibe all around from other types of conventions or events that I've been to before. There was a lot of energy in there, and it was kind of cool seeing the behind the scenes essentially of everything going on in the industry.
I was actually quite touched by the reception. We actually, in the spirit of giving, we actually set up a little mocktail bar with our great co-host Sarah, who was also a mixologist, and so we did these like mixology bar kind of concussion with different based on the different books, different titles that we have from Evermind, Zero Ghost, Bladesmith, and so I think we'll have like a photo gallery on our website pretty soon, so people can actually see exactly what the heck we're talking about. But for those who haven't and are not exposed to Comics Pro, here's a little plug into their website, comicspro.clubexpress.com. You could kind of see the professional retail organization. They do a lot of great work, including introducing the new comment structure for metadata, as well as really just, I would say this visual says it all, connecting folks, which it's a great networking event for especially kind of noobs like us in the retailer space. Educate really like there's a lot of great forums and different sessions where you could learn about anywhere from like how to order and stock for your shop to as a publisher, like the process to creating art and books, and then advocate, really like promote and get the word out for the comic industry. So yes, without Comics Pro, I don't know if the industry will be what it is today. So definitely want to give a great plug on that. So let's get to the news of the week. I mean, we found this article by Heidi McDonald's Comics Beat by Jacob Shapiro, who basically said he's kind of taking some time off and decided to come back to writing. So, what were some of the news from this article that stood out to you, Nate?
So number one thing that everybody in the industry is talking about, and they're still going to be talking about for a long while, is the Diamond bankruptcy. So Jacob actually kind of talks a little bit about how um, people are owed money and need to owe money, which I'm pretty sure we're going to get into a little bit later anyway. But essentially, this is kind of like a recap. This whole article is a recap of uh, Comics Pro, along with giving us this opportunity to see what the biggest highlights were from the whole thing. Number one was Penguin Random House is kind of taking over the industry. They had a strong presence at Comics Pro, um, and they were focused on like these bigger retailers, these bigger publishers as well, like Dark Horse, Marvel, IDW, and I think we talked about it a few weeks ago with Boom Studios moving over to Penguin, um, which is kind of cool. Um,
And I
and
think it makes sense, to be honest. I mean, if you think about kind of publishing in general, one of the things on the business side, Nate, we're seeing more and more is the kind of book publishing market really starting to like merge with the comic book world, because ultimately, even though there's this kind of floppy comic book sequential system in place where comic book companies sustain the revenue, and we're not there yet as 24/7, but as a real comic book company, you actually need to have trade paperbacks, and that basically establishes you as a evergreen title for every trade paperback that comes out. And Penguin Random House is 100 years in the making, and like they know the trade paperback and book market very well. So it actually makes a lot of sense that they're onboarding a lot of these larger publishers. And then kind of a second runner up was this kind of DC upstart Lunar Distribution, which has DC Image Only Press, which to me like feels more like a very like comic book purist play. They also bring on guys like Silver Sprocket and Bugilhan Press, which I didn't see at Comics Pro.
yeah, and speaking of not at Comics Pro, there was also Dark Horse wasn't actually there. Um, that's something he noted in the article as well. But Dark Horse uh, has its own issues going on, in addition to what's going on with Diamond, with them stopping their digital platform for their comics. Uh, they've done some budget cuts and they've let some people go. And they said at the end of March. So any of you people who actually have Dark Horse's digital formats from their app, you need to download that before the end of March. But interestingly, Jacob said in his article that Dark Horse didn't make an appearance, which, given the current things, uh, makes sense with them cutting costs here and there. But it was a little unusual while other companies came in, while Dark Horse is one of the bigger names out there.
Yeah, it's very
Um,
thorough actually. This whole article. They have laid off a significant amount of folks. I think 10% of their workforce, and then on
mhm.
top of that, yeah, we talked about how they're shutting down their digital comics platform, and they say down popular. I don't know how popular digital comics platform is, because I know for a fact like Marvel has theirs as well. But I think monetization on digital has always been a challenge, because I think one of the reasons people love sequential comics is you get to own the comics. But when you do sequential, you're subscribing, you get to read. But I do feel like there's something lacking there. One little highlight I didn't know was there's a Plants vs. Zombie comics app. I had no idea that this even existed, because probably about a decade ago, Plants vs. Zombie was like one of the biggest games on mobile. And I remember a lot of my friends' kids, were just in love with Plants vs. Zombie. And I would buy them toys and buy them, stuff from the app and all that. So, great title, but perhaps it's kind of lost its luster.
A lot of people are having issues with figuring out better ways to do their digital copies of their comics. And just across. So while I was looking at some of these articles and whatnot, that became like a almost like a common theme across the industry at the moment. However, I think we actually have a solution, and here's a shameless thing for me to do. You people watching, should go over to 247comics.com because you can read the first issue of everything that we put out for free on our site. And we have a pretty strong reader. Everything's very capable, and um, I am not ashamed to say that. So you can look at that, the Bladesmith Ash Can edition. Uh, Available on our site. We have our own reader. It is our digital version of things going on, and it is so cool to be able to read the first issue of all the work that's been put into things. And currently, as Carl's showing, these delicious pages of Bladesmith. And speaking of Bladesmith, Carl, you want to tell people a little bit more about what's going on with Bladesmith?
Yeah, no, Bladesmith's here. I mean, you guys can read for free. We subscribe personally to try it before you buy. And timing wise, this is perfect because we are in the midst of our campaign for Kickstarter, and it's for the first 3 issues. We literally just hit 15,000 last night, which is more than about double our goal now. And so pretty excited. I mean, we have about 154 backers. The first 247, if you're into the digital side of things, speaking of digital, gets a free download for the VV Artist Edition. But otherwise, we're trying a few new things. This is going to be the first time we're testing out, digital metal cards as part of the package. We're going to have like a variant cover that's like a hollow foil. And on top of that, some of these creators are guys you might know. Chris Lee, Justin Kalen Chen, who worked on Bel Air, Brother Son for Netflix. Chris, he's done Tiger Division. He's actually doing Doom's Division, which is now basically Doctor Doom taking over Tiger's Division. Moon Knight, Iron Man, Fantastic Four. Linji Park, former CA agent, who now is a creative force in himself. We learned from last night's studio stream that he even draws and writes and, totally multi-hyphenated. Will Quintana, the colorist, he's worked on all the names pretty much, Captain America, Spider-Man, Avengers. So really brings the color of these pages. But yeah, this is also a big part of our news. Like, we are in the midst of it as 24/7 Comics. As an independent publisher, every dollar counts. So if you're able to back us, feel free to jump to first 24/7 Comics, read the book, give it a sample, and then if you like it, go for our Kickstarter and check it out and back it right there. It's very easy. So back to news. I mean, one of the major announcements, Nate, this week was also the Marvel and DC crossovers. And they did announce that Comics Pro. What was pretty cool was, CB Cebulski, who's the editor-in-chief at Marvel, showed up, as well as Jim Lee, who we all love as, I think he's the number 1 artist in the world, who's also the head of DC, and made this announcement, which I think it's pretty powerful because this hasn't happened for a very, very long time.
Absolutely. I remember growing up, and I guess it's comics adjacent, but one of my favorite places that I ate as a kid was Giovanni's in Brea, California. Just for those people who aren't from the Southern California region, you don't know where that is, but it's long gone. Had probably the best Italian sub I've ever had, but they had a whole arcade section, and I would, whenever my family would go to Giovanni's, always made sure I went to the arcade, and I played the Marvel and DC arcade game there, and that was so much fun to play as like Wolverine or Cyclops or
Are you talking about Marvel and Capcom?
Marvel Capcom, but Marvel Capcom also came out on PS2, PS3.
Marvel DC arcade. Was there an arcade game? I have no idea.
There was an arcade game, and Giovanni's had it because I thought it was weird.
Oh yeah, there is an arcade game. So interesting. Game machine features Marvel. Dude, I totally missed it. I did not. This is probably after my time.
It was so cool. It was really cool to see.
Wow. That's so sick.
That was.
You could buy one for your house if you want one.
eBay.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like, there's classic arcade machine. I mean, a lot of these arcade cabinets are also refurbished, so people would take kind of the insides and they would build it from there. But I did not know that there was a Marvel DC arcade. But go on.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was my biggest exposure to doing crossover with
Hmm.
Marvel and DC because I know a lot of people are DC people. I'm definitely leaning. I lean more towards Marvel, but it's really neat to see that these days, because I remember some of the comics, which eventually I think I'm gonna have to pull out the old collection that I have.
Hmm.
I have two issues of a Marvel DC crossover, and they're in the middle of space. That's what I remember very clearly. But to see it really coming up, um, and CB was talking about putting some jokes in there, like in the article, or sorry, Marie Javins was like saying, asking, "Can I make more fart comics as part of this?" Referring to upcoming Scratch and Sniff Harley Quinn comics. And CB countered, "I don't think that's exactly what they were talking about," and just making jokes about it because they want people to be a part of it. It's not just one camp against the other. But if you look at comic books, the comic book industry as a whole, really you need people to read everything. And what better than getting two powerhouses of Marvel and DC to do crossovers and help promote one another with different worlds and different universes, different superheroes. What are your thoughts on the crossover?
I think it's needed. I think, I kind of mentioned this even before Comics Pro to a few other publishers. We're a small cat, so it doesn't make sense for any publisher to collaborate with us because I don't know what we bring to the table yet. But over time, I would love to see more cross collaboration with publishers because I felt like that was what was so fun about the industry growing up. You saw kind of Image and Valiant crossover. You saw the Marvel DCs, and this kind of stuff just hadn't happened for a long time. And I think things like this is what going to get fans engaged because the kind of the unity of like the comic book industry can be felt through the pages, and I think people will get a lot more bullish about it. So I think that's that. I think that's kind of what I'm actually pretty excited about. So I'm happy to see that it's happening now. Would they deliver a solid story? I really hope so. I hope this is not just a gimmick. I hope they, have it well thought out. I hope they kind of really put some like a good story behind it and some good artists. But they haven't announced a ton of details yet, so I'm excited to see what that kind of turns into. Now, speaking of details, one of the studios did announce a bunch of details, and it was DC. So James Gunn, he and Peter Safran, who's a co-studio heads, there was a lot of Comics Pro press as well as retailers that got to go visit DC, which I thought was a really good move because Jim shows up and then they schedule like some sort of tour for a lot of the retailers, and they got to go see a presentation from James Gunn on what the new slate was going to be. And so obviously Superman is coming out, which is probably going to be like the main focus for the summer as a hit. And then, they also talked about the Lanterns, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. One big one they said was Clayface, which basically will be like a horror drama, which they said is like a body horror drama. Definitely kind of reminds us of like Substance. I don't know if you saw that movie. At the end, she was definitely looking like Clayface. Sergeant Rock is a very golden age character that I think will be very interesting. And then Peacemaker is coming back, obviously, and I was such a big fan of Creature Commando. Have you seen that yet, Creature Commando? It's
I
so
have not.
Oh my gosh, please, if you have Max, watch Creature Commando. That's like a mandatory watch. It's so good.
Is it okay? I'll put that to my list. For the people at home, would you mind? Would you be able to summarize just the premise of Creature Commandos?
Yeah, let us know. Put in the comments below what you think about Creatures Commando. Am I totally wrong? Do you hate it? Would love to hear. And have you not seen it? Let us know as well. Now, a couple of things. They also talked about how the authority is kind of being put in the backseat, and then obviously a Green Lantern is going to be another focus on the TV side as well. So I'm a big fan of James Gunn. Ultimately, what he did for Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a complete unknown IP in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think he will do for DC. He will definitely bring DC back to its most authentic form. He's not afraid to, reference the material that made these IPs what it is, and he's very respectful of the material instead of trying to replace what worked. He tends to go in line with very faithful adaptation. So pretty excited about DC in general. I would say that kind of just coming off how they handle the retailers and the relationships there this year.
Definitely, and they were talking about doing this is basically the summer of Superman with all sorts of new comics coming out um, in regards to Superman. In addition to that new movie, um, the Supergirl comics as well. Everything's just kind of coming out for that over summer. The series releases and shows and whatnot. It's making a big statement of bringing these stronger characters, both villains and superheroes alike, um, more visible. Like it seems like James Gunn, along with the executives at DC, are thinking more about the consumer and trying to revive the many things that they want and what they want to see. Um, so Summer of Superman, here we come. But DC bringing out, I'm really curious about the Clayface because that could be really cool. Especially after what's his name? Colin Farrell after
Oh yeah, with Penguin. Yeah,
Penguin, thank you.
so good.
Especially after the Penguin, like it'll be interesting to see where they go with it or what they do with it. Um, and with James Gunn in the driver's seat, I'm pretty sure we're going to get something good. And at the very least, we're going to get an awesome soundtrack along with these IPs that are going forward.
What are your thoughts about visually? How do you feel about Superman and his portrayal? Because I know Zack Snyder kind of made him very adult, but what I'm seeing with James Gunn is, Superman is reverting back to a very comic, kind of cartoon style look and feel. Even when you look at the Superman trailer, I feel like it's definitely kind of reverted back to more of like a uh, comic book universe feel. It's less grounded. It's a little bit more fantasy driven, and the colors are much brighter. Like, how do you feel as a fan?
You know what? It it's pretty good for me. I like the classic comic book look to things. Um, I know you just scrolled back up from it, but there's the Captain Underpants version of Superman there
Yeah.
somewhere, and like,
Yeah, so smart.
uh, but there you go. Yeah, uh, which that's important too. Is like getting into the kids game and whatnot. But I like the classic comic feel. I've already stated my opinion though about the new Superman movie coming out, where I don't like how soft he looks. You
Mm.
you, you kind of want your Superman a little more chiseled, or um, you expect these awesome muscles to be rippling and things like that. But that's just my opinion because I think it exudes authority when you have a very toned superhero. However, I do agree with the colorations and some of like the previews of the upcoming issues coming out for Superman. I do like the coloration that's used in it. I think it's a little more bright and classic. And who doesn't like classic?
Yeah, it's so
The
hard to live up to Henry Cavill, though. I mean, talking about the ripness and like how ripped that
Mhm.
dude is, it's really hard to find someone that kind of fits that body type. But he did a good run. Like I thought he had he brought a lot to Superman, and kind of like you said, the whole chisel look. I thought he had a good look too, but I feel like he just didn't have like great materials to work with when it comes to the stories that he was part of.
I agree. And I mean, if it starts with Superman, we're doing Clayface. We have Creature Commandos, Peacemaker season 2 coming out. It makes me wonder what else is in the future for DC. Are they gonna, after last year or a couple of years ago with the snafu of getting rid of um, Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot, who, oh, celebrity crush right there, Gal Gadot. Um,
Yeah,
but
she's as perfect as a Wonder Woman as you get, I think, but it doesn't seem like she's going to continue her contract.
no, she got let go as well
Yeah.
from DC. So makes me wonder. So if we're starting with Superman, are we going to redo Wonder Woman? Are we going to get a new Green Lantern? Are we going to get? Are we just going to circle back and eventually get a refreshed Justice League in the future?
No, he said
What are
it's
your
complete
thoughts?
reboot. So everyone is rebooted. At Comics Pro, that was kind of like the big deal, and through this announcement is a full on reboot. So I don't think he's doing anything. He's not inheriting anything, and he even says Matt Reeves' Batman will not be the Batman that's in the DCU. And so I think he's doing a refresh. And I think that's really the way to go. So, I mean, enough about DC. Let's talk a little bit about Marvel. I mean, one of the pieces that you brought up was what's happening here with the MCU. Any reason why this stood out to you, Nate?
I think this is a very interesting and controversial um, topic for those who nerd out in the MCU, where, uh, according to this article from Forbes, not a usual comic source, but they just had to talk about it, where our Scarlet Witch, Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch, uh, kind of was teased as coming back to the MCU. Uh, so if we remember in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, spoiler alert for you guys who haven't seen it yet, but in the end, a big temple falls on her. There's a big flash of light, and the thoughts are that she dies. You know, she gets crushed, her powers get exploded. It's it sucks, you know, and it's like, okay, well, the character's gone. But in this article from Forbes, they point out that there is a comic panel that kind of showcases Scarlet Witch with her Darkhold fingers, you know, her black fingertips, behind bars essentially, and essentially it comes from the TVA comic, the Time Variance Association from the MCU.
Authority,
Uh,
authority.
oh, sorry, Authority. Yeah, you're right. Time Variance Authority. And Wanda is in this scene being held captive by the TVA, which means that flash of light that we saw in Doctor Strange may not have been just her getting crushed, but could be similar to other TVA events where they kind of appear, grab her, and then put her into just a holding cell. Which now the biggest debate out there amongst people is this comic actually canon? Because it does refer to Loki's saving of the master timeline or whatever it is, and how he saved everybody. So if you haven't seen Loki, go watch it. It's a masterpiece. I love Loki. Um, but because he saved everybody and the grand timeline is all put together, we also have this where people are trying to figure out whether or not Scarlet Witch getting saved is going to be canon. And if it is, then is Wanda coming back to the MCU on screen? Are we going to just keep following it? Because we're kind of in this what if scenario of seeing where everything really lies. What are your thoughts, Carl?
This sounds like a reflection of how Disney was restructured. I think maybe a couple years back, where the Marvel Comics group was always separate from the MCU and the movie studio side of things. But I think a few years back, they actually, and they kind of talked about this last year in an article where when TVA #1 came out, that there was some sort of connectivity to the MCU. But as we all know, Kevin Feige, who's currently kind of like being put out there by Rob Liefeld on questioning on if his cold streak is going to cost him his job. He was given the Marvel Comics division to fall under the MCU, and Kevin Feige's been managing the Marvel Studios for probably the last like 15, 20 years. And so when he was given this Marvel Comics, people did kind of predict and thought that okay, he's gonna start leveraging these two worlds to interconnect. So this basically points out one of the scenarios that could be it, where it's like, all right, she dies in Doctor Strange, but then she shows up in TVA as one of the captives in their world. And so I hope to see more of this, but at the same time, I also feel as connected as they are with maybe the comics and movies, they have a lot to do when it comes to connecting with the rest of their franchises. Because one of the things that Chris and I talked about in our stream the other day was this whole Marvel Rivals, where and I'm going to be just out of curiosity to see if people are also asking this is where are the Marvel Rivals comics? Because Marvel Rivals is the biggest freaking video game to hit the world, and they didn't even talk about it at Comics Pro, and so I guess they're basically saying that they're gonna do something in April 2025. But man, like, what a lack of coordination on their part, because to me, this thing is a freaking hit, and the height of it when it came out was in November. Now they're gonna publish a book 6 months later, which is fine, but it's still, how much money was left on the table by not having comics released. And so talking to a few of the retailers, they all kind of wish that Marvel Rivals came out in November because they've never had such a huge demand of people coming to the store looking for Marvel Rivals. And apparently this kind of land shark character is like super popular. Not sure, Nate, if you've seen Marvel Rivals or like the game itself, but we did a little kind of review of it all. And I know they've been doing Marvel Rivals covers, and these been selling out like bananas. But it's a Marvel Rivals game. It's a game that's basically been the talk of the town, and a lot of it has to do with their characters and how awesome they look. And if you were to look at the heroes, look at this, like design wise, it's just like totally next level when it comes to character design. And a lot of it is due to it being an Eastern studio, and then they are basically, designing the character. Look at these characters; they look freaking awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I don't know how to turn off the sound, but the sound is way too loud, so I'm gonna turn it off. But yeah, they need to make it easier to turn off the sound. MarvelRivals.com, please take care of that. But man, their characters are so well done. It just makes it where you kind of scratch your head, like, okay, that's cool. You're connecting the cinematic universe of the comics, but how about your franchise group, man? Like, you have this big ass, video game coming out. It's about to be a hit smash, but you're not putting it into the comics, and that's such a missed opportunity. So that's kind of one kind of question mark I have for Marvel and what they're doing over there.
Definitely. And I mean, it seems like Marvel Rivals uh, is one of the more popular games out there. I mean, I see that it's got a 9 out of 10 rating on Steam, 4.4 out of 5 stars on PlayStation. They're doing something. And you're right. Like if it's this popular and people are going that crazy for it, then what? Why did they hesitate, and what took so long to get a Rivals based comic or series out there.
Wow, look at this look at this cover, man. I keep looking at it, I'm like, dude, this is freaking awesome. So good.
Just imagine when it does hit, they need to up their game and be ready for whatever's coming down the pike, because if people are wanting it and they're hungry for it, then they definitely need to um, come into their britches and take care of their people, their audience that needs it. Um, and I like the text; it's very edgy. Look at that motion that you're
Woo!
showing.
Marvel Rivals key art, man. Look at this stuff. That's so well thought out, and it's just like this huge world that they've built.
Hmm. And if you guys are watching at home, please let us know if you've actually played Marvel Rivals. Um, I don't video game myself, but if we get enough people, I'll give it a shot.
Man, look at these character designs, right? Woo!
It's very it the that's that
Ooh.
looks so video gamey, like just like the body structure and whatnot. So that's so cool that they put these characters in like that.
Damn, Cap looks freaking amazing. Is he wearing like Iron Man like gloves?
That's
He
what I
looks
was just wondering.
yeah, no shield. I mean, Cloak and Dagger is like a classic '90s character. Maybe they're gonna bring them out soon. But oh man, Doctor Strange looks badass. Look at this. The
Yeah.
designs, man. Oh, this world. Groot. Wow.
Whoa, Groot looks.
Magical Groot. Yeah, I mean, we could do this all day. I mean, look at Hawkeye. Wow. Yeah, we kind of did a round of this with Kreese, and yeah, I could look at these guys all day. Just the character designs are so intentional. Everyone has a little bit more magic to them, and so yeah, man. Marvel, come on, get your act together, guys. Definitely get on top of Marvel Rival. I'm glad it's coming out in April. I hope in the future when they have more. This is actually the most popular character. They say Jeff the Land Shark.
Jeff the Land Shark.
So
Interesting.
funny. So funny. Anyways, any other news we should discuss, Magic Nate?
I think there's one more piece, but before that, I do have a breaking headline for you, Carl. Found out earlier today, and this just in for the rest of you, um, a large wooden object uh, with a pointing end was found spinning at high speeds in the middle of a downtown area. That's our top story.
Oh my gosh. What's our last one? What do we have to cover?
We need to talk about Diamond.
Oh, okay. Diamond. Which article? Didn't we talk about him earlier already?
I kind of touched on it, and I
Uh,
promised our people that we would talk about it a
yeah.
little bit more, but it's important to kind of discuss more Diamond news. I know it's saturated the market, and everybody is talking about it, especially when we were at Comics Pro,
Big time.
which, for the record, we were. I the feedback was we were the most fun booth there. We had a great reception. Between the mocktails, we had these wonderful people coming by and talking to us about our comics. Carl and I were situated mostly at our table, welcoming people in and talking to them. But we also had a puzzle box in honor of our Bladesmith Kickstarter going on now, which you guys should definitely check out. Um,
Here it is. Bladesmith Kickstarter. If you haven't checked it out already, definitely check it out. Give it a follow, share with a friend. Here's the best way to do that. Click on this little thing here, and then you'll get a short project link so you don't blow up your friend chats.
uh, and we'll put a link of that down in the description below for you guys, so you can be a part of the Bladesmith journey. But in addition to that, people were talking about Diamond in different capacities, but we also had people talk. Well, you and I were briefly talking about how Diamond's asking for money.
Right. This was a big one. So what happened was Diamond obviously, announced their Chapter 11 bankruptcy, top of the year, and then obviously what happens when you go through bankruptcy court is the judge will have you kind of file for like whatever debt you have, and then you would then also try to collect, kind of debtors to you. And so basically, they did announce a lot of creditors that they owe money to that will be forgiven, which I think is going to really hurt the industry. Middle tier guys like Dark Horse, Distillery, even like Dynamite. They all are kind of like the one that has been prioritized under Diamond, but now Diamond will not be able to pay them for their sales last year. And then on the other flip side, Diamond also announced all these retailers that owe them money, and so there's about 22 million debts owed to Diamond, with 11 million overdue and 6 million seen as irrecoverable. So really, there's like a potential of recovering 7 million, and most of these come from comic book retailers, which is kind of a challenging situation for sure.
Yeah, it makes you just kind of wonder what's really going on because at the same time, yes, you should pay up the money that you owe. However, some of these places, they don't have any invoices or anything like that saying that they owe money. Um, some of the companies that Diamond's worked with, and Diamond asks for the money, not in the millions or the full lump sum, but they keep asking in small chunks of thousands of dollars. Um, some of the companies report that they've they've already paid it off or those invoices don't exist. So is there something sketchy going on? Is there um, who's at fault in that case? Like, what do you think is really happening?
What I'm hearing is Diamond has served as the bank of the industry, and because they have basically often floated comic book shops if they couldn't pay their bills, they would just kind of casually allow invoices to slip. And so, kind of the way it works is, Diamond facilitates the solicitation. They work with all the comic book shops, and then it'll be, let's say, 5 months before the comics are going to ship. So what the comic book shops would do would put in their orders of Diamond, and Diamond, let's say, will collect and aggregate all the orders, and then they would go to the publishers and say, hey, like you have 5,000 orders for this book and 12,000 orders of this book, and then publishers would know what to print, so they'll send it out to the printers, and then Diamond, in the meantime, in parallel, will collect the money, and then once the publishers ship and they sell through and the returns are kind of accounted for, then Diamond would pay the publishers, right? And so what happens a lot of times is the books are shipped and there's an invoice that goes to the comic book shops, and there's varying times of when the comic book shops actually are paying. And so often comic shops may not even pay, and I think Diamond would float that money by paying the publishers on their behalf. And I think that's kind of what's happening here, where Diamond has paid out publishers for books shipped, but have not collected from comics. And then in turn, maybe has served as a bank to a lot of these comic book shops so that they could continue running their business. So pretty interesting stuff. And I don't know. I think there's an article here that says, will Diamond bankruptcy change the comics business forever? Yes, it will. And I think it'll be for the better because they've had monopoly on the comic book business for decades. And so in the last 5 years, with Marvel and DC moving on, and Image, that which was like the final nail on the coffin, comic book industry will be forced to change. And I think it's a really good thing because for us as kind of the newcomer, new kids on the block, there's always like when Mary and I talk about the business, often scratching our heads as to why the business is done a certain way. And now we know it doesn't work. And so I think for new guys like us, it's actually advantageous because we could actually just look to see what makes the most sense versus how things are done, and basically, succumb to it. And so now I think even retailers are very open to new ideas. So I think it's a positive thing. As you know, they say things get rough before they get better, and I think we're in the midst of that. And all I see are opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Especially as we're a small independent publisher for now. Um, this diamond thing was almost like a I hate to say it because a lot of the friends in the comic industry are kind of um, hurting right now because of Diamond, but we kind of missed the train on that one, and luckily on to bigger and better things for 24/7 comics. Um, but it's kind of interesting to see how this trusted monopoly is coming down and coming down hard, and we want to see where everybody goes and what actually happens to them, because a lot of people did abandon ship and go to Penguin. Um, a lot of people are doing direct to retailer somehow. Um, so it'll be interesting to see where the industry really kind of pushes and sets themselves apart as the whole environment kind of changes, which is it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, look at this thing. They had a literal monopoly for decades because the American laws that prevent such things apparently don't apply to the distribution industry, which is pretty funny. And so, yeah, I mean, the question is how did they F it up? They never changed. They just got lazy. That's what happens when you're, fed too well, and you don't have to do much anymore. You kind of lose, and that's why competition is always good because it keeps you hungry, it keeps you on your toes. And I don't think Diamond had any competitors, and so in a way they were kind of like their own worst enemy. If I was Diamond, I would invest in a ton of technology, invest in the comic book shops. I mean, there's so much they could have been doing. Unfortunately, they didn't, and so I think that's kind of why this thing fell apart. But there's a really serious Reddit forum here, and with plenty of stuff to talk about. So with that said, I think we're approaching our hour, Magic Nate. Any highlights from this week's news that was very interesting to you that definitely helps you look at the comic book industry in a new way?
Uh, you know what? It was really all about Comics Pro and seeing the retailers
Hmm.
and the retailers and the publishers' relationships across the board. Um, although we were the most fun booth, we are still an independent publisher and we're growing in the industry along with everybody else. And there's no better time than now for us to really get going on those things. So making those connections was really cool. Um, it was nice to see uh, how the synergy goes and where collaborations in unusual ways or in traditional ways can be had between different parties, especially getting books on shelves or just creating a better environment for people to consume the artwork, the storylines, all of that. Um, Additionally, another headline that I heard this week was a man is still in critical condition after swallowing $250,000 in large bills. No change is expected.
Oh man. So with that said, folks, thanks for tuning in to the live audience, but we will edit this into our weekend comics. And so this is Carl Choi, publisher of 24/7 Comics, and my co-host Magic Nate. We're signing off. Thanks for tuning in to the Inside Panel.
See you guys later.
Laters.